Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beavermont, and today I have the pleasure of being joined by all the members of Tentacult, who've just put out their most recent album, Untamed Revulsion, off of Transylvanian Records. Uh, Thank you so much, guys, for joining me. How excited are we to have the new album out?
Very excited.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. We recorded it almost 2 years ago, and we've just been kind of sitting on it. So
Mhm.
it's extremely exciting to have it out.
Yeah, we actually recorded it the weekend following our album release show for Lacerating Pattern, our first
Damn.
album. Just went right in because we were feeling hot. And then, just processes with engineering it and taking good time to get art from Wormwalk, who's, done incredible work on that art. Just kind of making sure we got everything right. That was where the rest of the time went.
Yeah, you want to tell me about the artwork because you mentioned the artist. Who was it again? Because I their style. Did they do the last one too? Last Writing Patterns.
No, that was Anton. That was
Yeah,
Zybe.
the the first album's artwork for Lacerating Pattern was done by Ibai Arifin. I believe he's a Indonesian artist.
Okay.
That I followed them for a little while because they had a very intricate, like the kind of a psychedelic, a little bit morbid, but art style with strong lines, a lot of swirls, a lot of cool imagery, and we were like, I kind of pitched that idea to everyone, and everyone was on board right away. And from the get go, yeah, he just like nailed the vision, I think. So,
yeah.
and we were kind of for the second album for the Untamed Revulsion, we were kind of looking for uh, something that kind of like represents the name in the visual form, something big and monstrous that's just kind of like ready to stand out and unleash its wrath upon everything. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, the Vermox artwork was interesting too because a lot of it is kind of like, some of it harkens to like the old school death metal artwork. It's like, lots of monsters and creatures, a lot of like the landscapes. But also he does a very also psychedelic style with it
Yeah.
and with a lot of dark visuals too. So it kind of, we kind of let him reign after List 3 album. He decided to go with that, like how he said it was it like a cagey like creature. So
Mhm.
yeah.
And he was a pleasure to work with, and he's just like I'm sorry, I already forgot how to pronounce his name.
Wormwalk.
No, no, no.
eBay.
eBay.
Oh yeah.
eBay had done a ton of work for, I think, the first like three Body Void releases.
Right.
Wonderful style.
Oh,
Yeah. And
great band.
yeah,
Hmm.
fantastic band. Getting to see
Yeah.
them live a few times, like every time, just like blow the soul out through the spine. Great.
They were on the show once last year, so
Oh, sick.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. And I can't remember the name of it, but the funeral side project that they did in 2023, I want to
That's right.
say.
That was them. Yes.
Absolutely astounding.
Yeah.
God, I looped that one back a few times. But Wormwalk's done a lot of great stuff too. Like he did the art for Nightingale, a fellow Sacramento band. He did, excuse me, shit.
For
Oh,
Sil
Maul. He did one for Maul, our homies in Maul. We've had the joy of playing with them a few times. The most recent album, In the Jaws of Bereavement, is
Mhm.
astounding. Really fun, hardcore metal. Um, and actually, one of the nice things about Wormwalk was once we commissioned him, we were able to get the original painting.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, the glare is awful on this. Sorry.
I see it though.
Yeah. And one of the millions of shout outs I'm personally all of us are going to give to James, the main man Jimmy at Transylvanian Recordings. He made sure we got our hands on this painting. It was lovely of
Hell
him
yeah.
to do that. Anyway, Wormwalk is a WYRM walk. Go support his stuff. He's great.
Well, the
Yeah,
reason
he's
I
wonderful.
I thought that there might have been a tie, or at least maybe the same artist. I mean, like thematically, they're both there. They're both kind of they, as you mentioned, Anton, it's very psychedelic, almost has this cosmic horror sense going on to it, which I really find striking, and I think kind of I like about your album art quite a bit.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now I'm curious because I want to know. I have my ideas of like what music you play and how I would describe it, but like obviously it's death metal. Like that is what you play. But like specifically, how would you describe your sound? And like what about it is unique? What kind of death metal is Tentacult?
We're still trying to figure that one out.
I can start it off.
Yeah, go for it.
The term I've used that really hasn't taken, except with like a couple of people with the same kind of humor about it as I do, is progressive caveman.
Yeah, I could agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
So it's like after the caveman discovered fire. It's like kind of after that.
Yeah.
They're kind of like they're kind of evolving. Yeah.
Not too
Considering
far
the
after
wheel.
that.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I do quite remember very vividly when Lacerating Pattern came out back in 2023. And what kind of drew me to it was, it had that death metal brutality for sure. Like that was definitely a focus point. But also just I don't know, I don't even know what the term I would use for it. It was just it was kind of nutty. Like there was just something like exciting about it. It was like, I don't know, was there some Gorguts or maybe some atheist inspiration in there? Like, where did some of these different ideas and different kind of riffing styles come from?
Well, so I would say a lot of it actually comes from like 70s prog rock,
Hell yeah.
but with death metal spin to it.
Mm-hmm.
I love stuff like King Crimson and Yes, Pink Floyd, Gentle Giant, stuff like that. And what I've always really appreciated about it is the song structures, that they're
Yeah.
not a lot, they all have their songs that are like, you know, intro, verse, chorus, bridge, outro, whatever. But I love those songs that just started at point A and went to point B, and it was a journey. And so like not every song is like that, but like we have especially on the first album, that was a driving force in a few of the longer songs writing method.
Yeah, I remember when because we wrote most, if not all of that material before Anton joined the band and really made us a band. Having him come in about 2020-ish, only a few months before Obsidian, the Obsidian Blade demo that Transylvanian put out for us. Um, and always credit to Anton. He came in with no previous band experience, figured out these gonzo songs in zero time, sounded perfect right away, and has only gotten better. Um, but it was a lot of throwing the spaghetti at the wall. Both Tyler and I, it was our first band. I was not even a musician when we
Hmm.
started with that. Um, Thankfully, these guys were patient enough to put up with me until I did. And we all come from very different inspirations and bring so many different elements to it because of that.
Yeah.
My favorite band for such a long time was Iron Maiden, but I've always been into the weirder stuff. I grew up on Alice Cooper from The Crib, the original stuff, and then their Zappa era is incredible. I'm a big jazz fusion guy. Anton and Chung, of course, can speak to their influences, but we all bring very different things and then, uh, put in a good amount of effort to bash them against each other and see what survives.
Totally.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have very different we'll listen to different things. We'll have different influences for sure too. Yeah, like Anthony was saying, it was my first serious band project that, have gone places, like I've been in a couple bands before, but never gone to before beyond like the practice space. And yeah, like they were saying, we all listen to different things. Like my favorites are usually old school doom metal or old school death metal, like the Bolt Thrower, Asphyx, early
Bolt
Entombed.
thrower.
Total support. Yeah. Asphyx, Entombed, Immolation,
Oh yeah.
Doom, Saint Vitus, Candlemass, Witchfinder General, that type of deal. It's always been my favorites. And we often argue about what's good and what's the best, but there's like a few, I think, bands that we all kind of agree on that we all like. So, but like bringing that all together, it's kind of like made a nice big old flavorful stew we got brewing. So
Yeah.
so to say. Yeah, and it's just kind of like we all, I think, even when we play as a whole, we all kind of like developed our own styles. Like, when Tyler wrote the riffs and Anthony wrote the bass lines and the drumming the Chung does, and my approach to vocals, I try to kind of like keep it like flexible and diverse. So yeah.
Yeah.
I have actually a really good concrete example of this. The last track on Untamed Revulsion is Voices of Entropy, which is, I want to say, without trying to be pejorative about it, it's our ballad. It's also one of the first songs that was written for this record. And when I first heard the way that Tyler wrote it, I was like, this screams ISIS to me, and ISIS is one of my favorite bands, so I am going to focus on that. And it was not until probably a year and a half later that I realized I'm the only person in this band that not only heard ISIS in Voices of Entropy, I'm the only member of this band who even listens to ISIS.
Hold on, hold on.
I'm the ISIS guy,
Yeah,
Anthony.
no, you
I
are
am
the
in
ISIS
I
guy, and I will never take that away from you, nor your Toyota with the mounted gun. But I
I
mean, yeah,
mean,
going back to the bands you mentioned as possible influences, I think Anton and I were the only ones who listened to. No, that's not true. Tyler listened to Gorguts as well, but like bands like Gorguts or Demolich or any of those, any of the great Finns,
weirder bands, yeah.
right? One of the bands we get compared to the most that we kind of agree with is Time Ghoul, but I think
Sure.
Anton and I were the only ones who like really were into Time Ghoul, and it was never
Hmm.
part of the conversations.
Right.
And we never came in and said that. Um, so it's been interesting. We get a lot. We've gotten a few people calling us Incantation Core, which is
Yeah.
like a lot of us have seen Incantation like 5 times, but not once had we like talked about Incantation, which is, again, no shade to them or no insult, but makes no sense to us.
Yeah. Incantation's amazing band. One of the all time greats. But that's not a band I ever pegged on you. Like that's Incantation's like just very much a very old school traditional death metal band, and they do that very well. And I just
Hmm.
don't think that's what you are.
No.
Yeah.
Like I would get if people said immolation, not that we're
Mhm.
super similar, but I can hear some things
Yeah,
in
there's some
there
of those
that are
groovier
similar,
elements in
right?
there that I think kind of are immolation-esque.
Yeah,
I just made up a
but
word.
I'm with it.
Yeah. Uh Tyler, it's very interesting that you mentioned like King Crimson
Mhm.
and Rush and bands of that nature, because I think maybe your Tentacult maybe is was foreshadowing what was to come, but just like a year later, and you have
Mhm.
bands like Tomb Mode and Blood Incantation just completely running with that idea and incorporating
Mhm.
that into their sound. So like there's a precedent for those ideas to meld and be seen in more of a death metal form.
Mhm. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm not really sure what else to say about it, but like it's it makes it a lot of fun to kind of like take what we know and what we've seen being done with death metal and kind of putting that all right, let's make it a little weird. Let's get some odd time signatures and some odd meters and like some strange structures and kind of like see what we can do with it.
Yeah.
I would say for album two, our approach, like a lot of what we're talking about is just summative of the band. But with album two itself, with Untamed Revulsion, we were much less intentional about trying to foreshadow where something was going and much more into like writing in the actual rehearsals itself. and just unleashing ourselves. I'm now realizing that the album title um, kind of, yeah, it's Untamed. It's literally like us trying to unmuzzle the things that we may have been a little bit too compositionally fixated on in the first album. And as such, I'm now remembering that this album does not have perhaps any weird time signatures. Like things go from 3 to 4 and 4 to 3, but the sevens and the nines that we were doing in the first album, yeah, those things we did not really have worked out super organically at the time. We perhaps do now. And a lot of that energy is going into the writing of our third album, which takes kind of the bits and pieces from what we've learned from the first and second and applies them a little bit more holistically. One of the things that we hear a lot from people about this second album is that it's very unexpected for them. And the way that it ebbs and flows throughout the record is like particularly more dynamic than what they're used to hearing in death metal. And that is absolutely what we were going for. Um, yeah.
And I would say, even though I think even though we don't have the extremely, intentional and, we were you should have seen the mathematics we were doing for lacerating pattern in the rehearsal space. But for album two, even though, you could call it more simple time signatures, I think it goes unnoticed that it's not there because we keep those pulses that are jarring in places. And so much of that is Chung's steadfast dedication to never being bored.
Well, I mean, I love that you like mentioned, the time signatures. There's not as many nines and 11s and whatever being thrown out there, but there's I like I think a lot of bands maybe get caught up in the think, okay, if we want to like move forward and be more adventurous on this record, right? That you have to be Dream Theater. And that's just not the case. You don't have to play with the foundations of the music itself. You don't have to play with like the fundamentals for it to be more interesting or more experimental or more engaging. You can do things and spread out what sound you bring in without it becoming like a calculus problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so much
100%.
of so much of what, like, the guiding principle on this record, particularly my own experience, was coming into confidence as both a band and as what we now know how to bring to the table as
Mm-hmm.
individuals. And kind of the guiding principle on this one was like, don't think too much.
Mm.
Just grind it out. Like both Geometry of Shadows and Scorching Eclipse, the first two tracks, we wrote those in like 2 hours apiece in like 2 weeks
Mm.
or something, right? Maybe even less time. And those versions and Scorching, or sorry, not Scorching, Geometry of Shadows, which I'm sure we'll get to the music video for that later, but um, that was a song that I had attempted to write uh, within the first year or two of Tentacult, and it was dog shit.
Hmm.
I had no idea what I was doing, and then, but there were pieces in there, and so, um, but so much of, Untamed Revulsion is a classic sophomore album in a way, in that, like, oh, we know who we are as a band now. But you're right. For us, I might say that for us, our expansion of our sound was trying to strip it down, if anything,
Hmm.
was trying to just do something and just, you know, trust the gut and move.
Yeah, and a lot of the ideas that ended up going into the final draft were like, hey, what if I did this over this one thing? And we're like, that's cool. Let's just do that.
Yeah.
And so, one other thing too is like, for myself as a writer, I've always like before Tentacled, I just made a lot of really absolutely insane, almost unlistenable electronic music that's just very complicated and weird. And so a lot of that came over into the first record, and then I was like, okay, yeah, this is good. I like this. People like this, whatever. And I was like, it'd be kind of cool to like not do that as much. So it almost sounds like a reverse progression for a lot of people, but like I thought I got a lot out of doing that, and it was awesome, and we made some great songs. And it's weird because it's for me at least. I'm like, for most people, the challenge is the other way around. Like for me, the challenge was like, hey, don't do that. Don't make it too complicated.
Yeah, I mean, like the typical progression for a band that people like kind of think about, you go from like Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning to Master of Puppet.
Mhm.
You get bigger and more expansive, and you're kind of doing the opposite and challenging yourself kind of in the inverse, and that's cool.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a tightened discipline,
Hmm.
really. Getting comfortable with both trusting and saying no to a lot of things, which was great.
Now, Anthony, I actually kind of DM'd you about this when we were kind of setting up the interview, but something that I noticed listening to the record, as compared to Lacerating Pattern, is this incorporation in some more death doomy aspects. Was that something intentional, and kind of where did that come from?
A lot of that I would say was our primary, this has changed a bit for album three, but our primary thing when we're writing is like, how's it feel?
Hmm.
Right. And particularly in that time, Tyler was uh, really hitting his sludge stride. You could speak more on it, but just really, we like walls of sound. We like
Hmm.
sitting in things. And it's just a good dynamic for tension and release.
Yeah.
It's a good harmonic space for us. Um, it's so I don't know exactly how intentional, but we in the sense that like I think that was just what we wanted to hear, so we made it so we could hear it.
Absolutely.
And it's something we're continuing to delve into with the new material we're writing, finding more ways to linger and make, really good use of those harmonic spaces.
Hmm.
Um, whether it's, to be even more crushing or to have some air, you know?
There's a lot of soundscapes there. I
Hmm.
think that those dynamics between, like you mentioned, like if we're talking, you noticing a lot of death and doom in it. Um, both of these spaces have a lot of soundscapes, and
Hmm.
when you merge them in a certain way, while the pulsations and tribulations are there, some great things can be like
Hmm.
cooked out of it. So, and I think we're like ran with a lot of those ideas and kind of like wanted to incorporate them more
Hell
and
yeah.
more into this album. So,
Yeah, I mean, one thing about it for sure is also that Doom is such an emotive space.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so earnest, and being able to work in those elements, like in the third track, Fulgurous Manifestation, um, Tyler came up with this bass line that I do. The that It comes around twice. It's the bass line that closes out the song, where my intention with how I play it is to make it like chiming like funeral bells. And it's got that kind of, our goal with that was to work in that mournful funeral doom
Hmm.
kind of thing, but not like to get that feeling without having to sit there and like cultivate that space the way you do in Funeral Doom, which is awesome. But our songs are already 12 minutes long, so we have to figure out ways to condense that idea and incorporate that. And having that little more emotive element makes the song stand out a lot more than just, straightforward death metal, which also
It's
rocks. But
it's mournful dead congregation.
Hell yeah.
Hmm.
Look, I'm seeing Mournful Congregation is on the bill for a festival I'm going to in a few months, and I've never seen them, and I am
they're so
so
good.
ready. Yeah.
So good. Oh my God. Yeah, Anton and I were at both of the migration fests, right?
I was just at the one in
Oh, the
Olympia.
first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the first one, yeah.
Yeah, and getting to
They
see them.
were,
Oh,
yeah, they were one of the main headliners that night. Yeah, that was a great experience. That was a great headliner and great closer as a festival as a whole. It just kind of
Yeah.
like brought everything together down to its like foundation. So
yeah, I'm getting chills
yeah.
thinking about it. Just like the most emotional, just like you want to bawl when you end a fest with mournful congregation.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. I think it's time to talk about it. The music video. You got What's Your Shadows. You got Wizard, Goblin, Muppets. Talk about it. What's going on there?
well, we've been friends through so our rehearsal space is Red Museum, this
Yeah.
all ages artist collective and venue sort of
Yeah.
in Sacramento. And
Yeah.
we've been there forever, been linked up with them, done a ton of events with them outside of Tentacult, but that's also our practice space where we write. And through that, they did these movie nights for a long time. This beautiful man, Adam Murphy, who now runs what's called Bootleg Cinema. Check him out. I think he's still on Twitch. Um, he did movie nights there. We made friends. He's always wanted to make a video for us. And a few months ago, he was just like, we want to make a video. And we're
Hell
like, yeah,
yeah.
you know what? Screw it. Let's do it. Like, now's the time. What do you got? And he said, well, we want to make something with fucked up puppets. We have this whole thing. And we're like, great. What would it cost? And he said, no, we're just fucking doing it.
it
Um, and they took the reins on it. And it was, one of the most professional and wonderful experiences.
looks
We,
great.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to be puppeteers on it. Uh, And actually, funny enough, he's worked so Adam Murphy and Joel Gillette, who has done a lot of great puppet stuff in the past, which is why he really wanted to do this. Forgive me if I get it wrong, but his he made a feature-length film, The Golden Bazooki, which is like a rockabilly musical retelling of Jason and the Argonauts with green screens and actually the lizard beast who gets fucked up early in the video is one of the monsters in that film.
So good.
So good. Yeah, check out the Golden Bazooki and I hope I got that right. And they even made a an introductory video for our album release show in Sacramento at Red Museum with the homies and Vile Rights and Demon Smoke, with voice acting and everything, projected B-roll over us with the evil warlock. Um, can't remember if I mentioned that we got to be puppeteers.
You
I
did,
was the
yeah.
Purple Mind Flare. Very proud of it. Um, and it was, they handled everything and just brought such passion and love to it. They were smiling the whole time,
Hmm.
so excited to show us stuff. And while they had pretty much everything, I did consult with Adam a few times whenever he'd hit a hang up, and I'd give him some ideas, like and all of us did in one way or
Yeah.
the other, kind of like pitch things around. Um, so it's just the power of having, the more wonderful friends you have who also happen to be equally passionate and sick artists in other ways. You got to hold them tight.
Yeah.
Uh, your art is only as good as the passion of your homies.
Fuck yeah. Um, well, let's I'd love to talk just maybe outside of music a little bit. Are you all gamers at all? Are you into Okay, cool. Hell yeah.
Chung is not, although he and his partner have been playing what, the Wii somewhat recently.
Oh, it stopped working. So,
Oh,
and then we just kind of
fair.
lost the appetite for it again.
Chung provides valuable commentary on the video games industry as a whole. So
Hell yeah.
I
Well,
was playing Monster Hunter right before this call.
hell yeah. Anthony,
I
what are you playing right now?
Well, my main things are Quake, Counter-Strike, not Counter-Strike 2 sucks ass. Big Street Fighter 6 guy. I've got a master rank jury. Or not jury, Jesus, Aki. Uh but I also really love indie games. I've been playing an early access auto battler deck builder called Cross Blitz that fucking rocks.
Yeah.
The RoboCop game, Rogue City. Been playing a bit of that. That game fucks.
yeah,
Hey.
total support to new RoboCop game for sure. I just started it and I was like, yes, this is exactly what the movie sequel should have been. So, yeah, I like a lot of different things too. I like old school turn-based strategies like, XCOM, Jagged Alliance type deal.
Yeah.
I like a lot of RPGs, like whether it's a Baldur's Gate or anything similar to it, but it's just a lot. It's a very time consuming. So FPS as well, obviously with RoboCop. Was a big fan of Cyberpunk 2077. Need to get back to it again. So, but when I have time, and a lot of like indie roguelikes as well. Like I was pretty crazy about like FTL, Faster Than Light,
Hmm.
that little rogue game. I like
Actually,
those. Yeah,
I have to
sorry.
ask you, did you try Into the Breach, their follow-up, the turn-based strategy game? I love it.
I couldn't get into it. I might.
I
It's
bounced off
it's
it the
weird.
first
Yeah,
time, but I got back into it a few months ago and it's like, oh shit, this is good.
yeah. No, like some of these roguelites are like it's such a hard, like a very fine line between like it could really engage one person, it could completely disengage the other, and vice versa, which is interesting because it's like that. Yeah, those two particular games are made by exact same people, and
Yeah.
one of them worked for me so well, and the other one didn't. So, but yeah, I like a lot of like turn-based strategies that are kind of like has like a big challenge or whatever. It's a lot of them are the same ones that I used to play as a teenager. Another great example. Heroes of Might and Magic 3 was like a not I don't think it's kind of popular in the United States, but more so in Europe. I'm originally from Russia, and all Slavs like basically grow up on those kind of games. So, and that's like a big one for me too. I remember seeing one of the Blood Incantation dudes rocking Heroes of Might and Magic 3 t-shirt, and I was like, holy shit, where can I get one of those? Because I want one of those. So, yeah, no, we all have our like nerd moments here and there for
Yeah.
sure. So
I'm gonna let you nerd out on whatever you want to nerd out in just a second. Uh just to make it even, but I do want to say for me, um, I am currently replaying through all of the Halo games, like just reliving my high school days. Um, they're just as good as I remember. And I think now, being in my 30s, I think I understand and appreciate the lore behind Halo a lot more than when I was in high school. Like I have like just more ability to conceptualize that, and I just think I really am really into it right now.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm a Halo fangirl right now, so hell yeah. But the game I've sunk thousands of hours into. Anyone who watches the show knows what I'm about to say. Um, I I have a maxed account in old school RuneScape. I still play it. I play it every day. I um that's something I would just tell to people off the street, like, hey, I play RuneScape. I guess that's not a cool thing to admit. But I love it. I I have reached the pinnacle of RuneScape, and so that is my greatest accomplishment in life.
I mean, nothing but praise for our
Yeah.
RuneScape queen.
Thank
That's
you.
rad.
Yeah.
Are you playing classic or the
No, so
mods?
old school. So I have never logged in a second of RuneScape 3. I know nothing about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I was
No,
just
so
curious.
yeah. No, just classic servers. Obviously the classic game still gets updates.
Hmm.
We have raids now. But surprisingly the game is still very popular.
Mhm. Yeah,
There's still
one of my boys plays it. He claimed to have been the king of fishing on one of the servers one day. I have no context to know if he's lying. I choose to believe it.
I've never heard of that concept, King of the Day of
Like
Fishing, but yeah.
like there's a fishing leaderboard apparently, and he claims to have been
Oh,
at the
sure.
top of whatever was reasonable to be at.
Sure. I mean, there's like,
I don't know.
whoever has the most XP, if you're in like the top 100, you are on a leaderboard, but that's cool.
Yeah,
Um,
that's all I know about
cool. Um, Chung, if you're not a gamer, do you have any other nerdy fascinations or interests?
I should mention that I used to I have poor video game relationships. It's similar to like what somebody might have a relationship with, like, I don't know. I'm definitely about to minimize other people's suffering, but heroin. I have a bad relationship with video games, and I had to cut myself off. Like I was
Okay.
big into Halo and Max Payne and Grand Theft Auto
Yes.
iterations, and I'd find myself like spending way too much time on it, and then just being pissed off
Yeah.
from not succeeding in the game, and then also spending a bunch of time in it. And then like one night I finally beat the first Halo. It was like 2010 or something. It was way late to get there. And I was like, what am I doing with my life? It is 4 a.m. and all I feel is a sense of relief that this is over. I feel like my time would have been better spent if I had just gotten drunk.
Well, Chung, the lesson from that, much like heroin, you just needed to get good at it.
Yeah,
That's a
just
skill issue.
it literally was a skill issue, and then I was not building the skills that I needed to either get better at the game or be okay with myself
Yeah.
sucking at it. So no, I guess I do not nerd out on video games, and I happily do not exist with them in my world. Though I have seen these guys play Broforce.
Yes. Was just
Highly
about to bring that up.
entertaining. I'm really glad that somebody's being utmost ridiculous with their tributes to the masculinity of the Reagan age, because it was a ridiculous time, and the things that seemed normal then are extremely abnormal in the history of what came before and what came after. And I appreciate when a video game leans into that, I suppose.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. What I'm nerdy about, and which I will spend zero time talking about, is old movies. I like run through different directors, just their whole opuses, and get a big just month-long dive into different directors. I think the one that I like the most and has just an incredibly large amount of material that is probably, I can't think of a single person I'd recommend it all to, but Ingmar Bergman is
I'm
like my
familiar.
favorite director. And like, he's best known for playing chess with death and stuff, but he has a wealth of just, he's miserable about everything. You'll find he was, it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of like romantic stuff. It's a lot of like hating God stuff, and it's a lot of just hating what is within you in a way that I think most people would find prohibitively boring. But I do not. And I think, I don't know, it might be just like a part of just being older. I'm in my late 30s. A lot of Untamed Revulsion, I wrote the parts and I wrote and dialed the parts while I was recovering, shall we say, from a divorce. And I'm really glad I did that, because again, the alternative was drinking, and this ended up being a lot healthier than that. So I'm just grateful that, like, as I've gotten older, I've learned to sit with space a little bit more, and that's
Mm.
that I think when we were talking about Funeral Doom earlier, like all four of us are very big into that sound. We all listen to it a lot. And we all think about ways in which we can incorporate our favorite elements of that into the death metal that we play. So, you know, every time I'm listening to stuff these days, I am thinking like, wait, what part of this is informing something that would be cool for the projects that I'm working in? And so I geek out a lot about music. We were talking about the calculus of things. I still do that recreationally. Like I will listen to a song like that sounded weird. I need to map this thing out and figure out what it is that they're doing.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Most of the time that really is just like, what is this time signature? I need to re-listen to the song until I can figure out where it loops and stuff. And it's highly gratifying to me. I don't know. I joke about this with my work friends, none of whom are musicians, and I'm like, there's a lot of nerds in different fields. The only the only field in which it's nerdy to be like, oh my God, I can count to 7 is music.
It's amazing
Yeah,
what
I'm
you
still
can
working
do.
on getting to 2.
It's kind of like just to kind of piggyback on what Chung was saying, the incorporating the funeral doom. It's kind of like got me thinking. There's a very sweet, like kind of like a fine line slash sweet spot of misery between like a funeral doom and death metal, where you fuse it like in a very particular way. It finds that little niche that just hits just right, and it just evokes like a certain emotions, that you
Yeah.
can just take them and run with them, and it sounds awesome, and it makes you feel good even if it sounds like the most miserable thing ever.
Yeah,
So
I mean, a lot of my thesis about my own view of metal is that at its best, it's uh, communicating and residing within the language of alienation,
Mm.
and all of the things that come with that. And both, to me, rage is an extension of sorrow. Um, and with that, that it, to me is that line, or at least a part of that line, or a way to get to that line, the ley line that joins death and funeral. And when you can hit them both at the same time, it's resonant in part because it's true,
Mm.
because it's both at the same time. Um, you know, it comes
yeah,
from the same place, maybe I mean to say.
I I I love black metal. It's my favorite subgenre. And like when I listen to like an old Dark Throne record, for example, a lot of people might find black metal boring, and I understand that. But for me, I resonate with a lot of what you're saying about Funeral Doom, and that like with a lot of like black metal, it's very hollow. It's just completely nihilistic. It's dark. There's this hopelessness to it. There's this bleakness that like I think can communicate a lot and can I can kind of find myself in a healthy way, but they can communicate that melodically in some way that's like almost beautiful. And then I think that's something that like I think can also be found in funeral doom or even in to some extent death metal. I mean, yeah, there is a beauty in ugliness sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, I could think of a few examples, but as you were making that wonderful insight, I felt
yeah,
Panopticon Roads to the North.
yeah.
That whole album is full with that longing and that what's the term? Sodade almost. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't put it exactly that way, but it's got that oh that yearning that is mournful.
Yeah.
Almost like for a desideratum, like something that was held and will never be held again. Oof. Yeah, no, I think you've got a great insight there. And we
Mm-hmm.
have this conversation because uh between the four of us, we have varying views of appreciation for black metal or not at all. And one thing we were talking about, it was like the way that black metal often ends up being something that ends up in another genre,
Mhm.
like blackened,
Yeah.
kind of like the way we see hardcore doing the same in a lot of current bands like Maul and Mind Force and all these other ways that you can work those in. And that itself is what is so great about black metal is, it's a really effective way to add that isolation, that
Mhm.
complete alienation and
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah, we've had a lot of chances to play with really fantastic modern black metal bands like Abstractor, we've played with Carrion Bloom, Estimi, and we're about to play with Liminal Shroud later this
Oh
year.
wow.
Yeah, so we're really excited because a lot of those bands are doing stuff with that genre that is highlighting specifically what you and Anthony are talking about, just like new ways to iterate on something that like was closed off in access in perhaps in its earlier iterations. But they're finding new ways to do the thing, be true to it, and some of us feel like it's superior to like the original vision sometimes, and we're trying to be. We're thinking about that kind of a lot when we approach death metal, doom, and even like some of our other like lesser influences from like grindcore or prog metal and stuff is just like they are doing a thing. Um, there's different ways of doing it, but like there's a specific reason we like the way that certain bands are doing it in certain genres. And we kind of try to think about like, well, how does that inform our practice? How does it inform the way that we get sonic elements out of our favorite influences within genres that we're incorporating?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Speaking of that shirt, the Spectral Wound shirt you're rocking, great example of that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. That most recent
Foundation,
record. Good
yeah,
God.
yeah, incredible. Just highly debating on trying to go see them like next month in the Northwest, but I don't know. But yeah, it sounds like it's a fundamental black metal, but there's like so much more to it. And I remember listening to like the first record and the second one several times, and the more I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of like interesting things happening that are not maybe not so obvious at first, but then you're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of cool intricacies there, like them, Negative Plane, Predatory Light, Ustalis probably, Vehemence. I like a lot of like the traditional heavy metal approach, like the Malakarpatan from I believe they're from uh Slovakia. Oh, I think crap. I
That's
can't remember they're from.
sounds
Uh,
about right. I'm not dropped out of my head, but yeah.
yeah, but you know what I mean by that. It's like a traditional, it's like a more traditional heavy metal approach to it, but
Mhm.
it's kind of like a blackened and weird, interesting. I
Right,
always liked,
like bringing second wave to first wave
right,
kind of thing.
exactly, yeah. I like to bring up Rotting
Damn.
Christ a lot because of how different every Rotting Christ there, like their early stuff versus like their Thy Mighty Contract and Air. It's more of like a chunky, almost like a heavy death metal type of deal. And then they get like with a on Triarchy of Lost Lovers, they get a little goth rock with it, with a little gothic melodic, and then their 2010s 2000 stuff, it's like very well polished, very well produced, but still somehow like different in its genre, and like they use a lot of different like the instruments to approach it. So that's kind of like it's interesting to see that bands that do that, specifically with it. So guess what I'm trying to say.
Um, Thanks for commenting on my shirt. Spectral Wound is my favorite band by far. Like, there's not even a close second. I love this band to death. Go see them. Anton, please do if you are. You said you were thinking about it. I saw them at Maryland Death Fest last year. Um, no, I'm not. I'm shitting you not. I've never seen this in a live show before. But as they finished off and left the stage, I turned around to go catch the next band I was going to go see. and people were literally bowing. They were like formed a line and started bowing. Like I've
We
never
are not
seen that.
worthy.
Yeah. No, but you're right. Like those first couple Spectral Wound albums, a very second wave take on black metal. It's very traditional, but it with a kind of a melodic edge that I think they have a mastery of that I think other black metal bands, more average bands, don't have. But on this new record, A Song of Blood and Mire, they like bring in some like AC/DC type riffs into it, and it works so well. Like they just let themselves evolve into this like black and roll band, and without kind of losing themselves. And I thought it was amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it's great.
yeah,
Spirit Possession, I think, is another band that's greatly impressed me when I saw them. It's just like two guys from, I think their guitarist is from, um, crap, Chalice, Chalice of, crap, what is that chalice called? Some sort of a chalice.
Not Pale Chalice.
Pale Chalice. Thank you. Yeah, they're like they were impressive, like the way he plays guitar, like the way how he does, and the way they keep the whole tempo with the drum, just two of them. Like,
does not use a pick.
yes.
Yeah.
Right. All fingers. And like I don't play like a string instrument, so anytime I see something like this, I'm instantly like, whoa,
Yeah.
impressed. So great stuff.
I want to circle back, Chung, to how you were talking about film, just because I wanted to say film is something I wish I could get into in the same way. And the reason I can't get into it is the same reason I can't get into like fiction literature. I only read like nonfiction. Um, I don't know what it is, but I can't passively comprehend a story. Like I can't just sit there either like read it or watch it. That's why I'm more drawn to video games because it kind of puts you into it. It's more of an active thing. And I don't know if anyone else that I know. I don't know if anyone else I know that relates to that, but that's just I. It's always been how my brain works.
That makes sense because I actually didn't really get into film myself until I started to understand and appreciate how things were made. And
Yeah.
I can't make movies whatsoever. Like, I can't act. I don't know how to use a camera. I can't even really engineer sound in any way. I just hit stuff with sticks. But with yeah, a lot of times when I'm listening to music and I'm watching a movie, I am constantly like what is entertaining me about it a lot is thinking about like what were the decisions that were being made, what were contingencies that were planned, and what is being communicated by certain choices that like we aren't really meant to think about based on how they're trying to present it to us, but it's things that like you kind of realize trying to build it backwards. Um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I being this deep into my 30s, I feel like just things of interest take cyclical natures and stuff will just not interest me for half a decade to even a decade and then just come roaring right back. And it's good to know why it does or doesn't, but I try not to overthink it and I try not to prevent myself from exploring a new artistic or nerdy recreation. If it starts to take, I will just let it take me where it wants me to go. Yeah.
Was there a first director that you found that like kind of ignited this interest of yours?
A first record?
A first director.
Oh, a first director. Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like I am not too dissimilar from anyone else who goes down this path in that like David Lynch opened up a new way to look at movies.
Yeah.
And like I'm old enough where I've lived with Lynch movies for so long that like they are compartmentalized in the milieu of things that I watch and reference and think about. But it really did sort of open up a new way for me to understand like what a director is, what a movie can be, and also like I feel like Lynch, he's particularly open about things like, oh yeah, no, we didn't go into this at all thinking we were going to do that. It just came out cool and we run with it. I think something I learned about Twin Peaks was like they didn't have the Killer Bob character written at all when they were even filming the episode that introduces Killer Bob. They just happened to catch the actor who plays Killer Bob, who was like, I think the light guy in a weird shot, and Lynch was like, there's no way I can top that. There's nothing intentional I can do to top that. We're just gonna take this shot and run with that as a plot point for literally the rest of this um the rest of this franchise. Really is that like he forms the basis of a lot of stuff that happens, and I think that actually played into some of the writing of this album. Is just like, whoa, that sounded cool, we're just gonna run with that one. Coming back to what you were saying about certain bands, I forget who you were talking about, where they pulled that AC/DC riff and you're like, oh shit, that's cool.
Spectral Wind, yeah.
Yeah, Spectral Room was doing that. Untamed Revulsion, we've got the track 4, Rays of Sinister Star, was a thing that Tyler wrote as a riff because he just wanted to write something that sounded like that. And we realized, it's fun to fill out the album with something that just breaks it up and then does something completely different, but at least we tried to execute on it well. But yeah, it wasn't a forethought when we were writing any of the other songs. And I think Raise the Sinister Star is one of the last songs we wrote for the album.
Yeah. I will also say right there, I know some people aren't going to like this, but I remember saying a lot that was as we wrote it, that was our Goulet zombie queen.
Oh yeah.
All the ghost heads out there.
Mhm.
Ghost is one of my favorites.
Yeah, we kind of just went with it because we hadn't done it before and it sounded good to us, so fuck it, run it in the studio. And then actually we spent a solid month of that long post-production period asking ourselves, does this even deserve to be on the album? And the feedback that we're getting from people who have listened to it is that that was not a question that we should have asked ourselves. It was really more like, is this the standout track of the album? Some people feel like it is. And I'm glad that we just kind of ran with the variety as it came to us as an idea. But yeah, I think the writing of this whole thing, the construction of it all of it felt a lot more natural than what we did for album 1. And we are trying not to be too complacent about that. We're trying to be more intentional about. I know I was watching your interview with Alex from Vile Rights and how he's saying like, the single's cool, but I'm a whole album guy.
Yeah,
this is definitely we're all whole album guys, and to some degree, I think that the genre wants to be whole album. And so when we wrote a lot of Untamed Revulsion, it was song by song. We weren't really thinking in terms of what the whole album would eventually be. It just came together. Like Anthony was talking about Scorching Eclipse and Geometry of Shadows. They were written back to back. Geometry first, I think, and then Scorching after. And then we realized, hold on, these go right into each other, and they serve as an excellent like 1-2 punch of an opening album. That was not pre-planned whatsoever, and we're not trying to recreate that magic. We're not trying to flip coins like that and just hope they come up. So we've become a little bit more intentional about what that looks like, what one song in an album does in how it weighs and balances things within the entire comprehensive nature of the album itself. Again, shout out to the Vile Rights guys for kind of making that explicit, but like that helped me understand like what it is that we're trying to do now going forward. I don't know how I got on that topic because I'm pretty sure I just remembered that we started off talking about movies.
Yeah.
You started talking about Twin Peaks, and I'm glad you did because you took it to a place that I wanted to take it to.
Cool.
I love Twin Peaks. I've seen it multiple times.
Nice.
And I think a lot of metal bands can learn something from David Lynch because I think what makes Twin Peaks great is something I think a lot of metal albums could make a lot of great metal albums. They're like, it's technically incredible, like the show itself, but David Lynch, as cerebral as he is, and has how like artsy he wanted to make the show, was not afraid to just have fun and be silly. Like the
Yeah.
log lady,
Yep.
that's objectively funny. It is
Yeah.
so hilarious that he personified good and evil and named it Bob. Like that is
Yeah.
so funny. Like
I have a whole thesis on this, but like in my life and in music, like yes, like all of us, all four of us are, but personally, I'm an overthinker. I love tearing
Right.
things apart, much like in a different but similar way to how Chung does it in his own life. And we all do that. But my main aspiration is just to be a goofy, fun guy and a
Mhm.
stupid guy,
Yeah.
and and be earnest and just live from the heart and from whim. And even with the previous thing about metal being the language of alienation, it is that earnestness, that inherent corniness that makes it connect. And that is, at the, David Lynch is the best at depicting the reality of life because of that
Yeah.
earnestness. And it's for all of its supposed surreality. I've never watched a David Lynch thing and thought like, oh, this is absurd. It's always been like, no, that's what it's like to live.
Yeah.
Like all of our daily experiences are fuzzy. All of our memories are not correct. All of the things that we see can't be communicated to anyone else. And he just has a great way of that heart and that earnestness and that willingness to expose yourself and suffer any incredible pain from your vulnerability so that you might touch the heart of something real and be touched. And that's, I don't know, I think you can't be a good metal musician without, well, I mean, you can, but you know what I mean? Like the best metal comes from the most vulnerable. It's why so many underground scenes are just full of sweethearts. The Vile
Yeah.
Rights Boys, they're the sweetest guys in the world. We adore them. And they're one of hundreds of examples.
It might not be a popular opinion of that I have, or something that I'm into. I know my closest friend, loves black metal, can't understand why I like this, but I am an unashamed, unembarrassed fan of just like the cheesiest symphonic power metal out there.
Dude, Nightfall
I
in Middle Earth is one
oh
of the
yeah,
most important albums in the world to me.
oh god, yeah. Yeah. I like it even cheesier than Blind Guardian, to be honest.
Yep.
I'll even defend Dragon Force. I don't even care.
Right.
Um,
You'll be right there banging Von Canto.
yeah.
Seriously. Sincerely, yeah.
Um, but what I love about it is, um, it makes me feel like I can go to war and win this battle. These bands that are just like having fun, they're not afraid to just be corny as fuck and just sing from the heart over the top about dragons and wizards. And I just love that. I love it so much. Um, I
Hell yeah. I
wish,
mean, it's what
well,
Dio was doing, you
yeah,
know?
it exactly is. I wish, I wish some metal fans would stop taking yourself so seriously and just let metal be fun. Then I think you'll learn to love power metal. You'll get into I don't know. You'll learn to like Halloween. You'll learn to like those
Yes.
bands.
Dude, Keeper of the Seven. Oh, yeah. Vile Rights. I was yelling with them about Halloween and Walls of Jericho at
Yeah.
the show. Yeah. Sabotage, dude.
Sabotage is great.
Sabotage rules.
Now there is a line across like I don't think I can ever get into like Sabaton or Powerwolf or what is the other band? Ailstorm, the
Glory
pirate
Hammer.
power metal band.
Yeah,
There
no.
is a limit there. Like there is a point where you cross into you are too camp at that point. But
Mhm.
I think
It
you
always
can
kind of
only
rings as
yeah
it rings as phony to me.
yeah
Like try hard. And I've come around on Dragon Force because I read them as that at first, and then I kind of realized like, no, no, there are better examples of what you're thinking of. And Dragon Force is like, it's not exactly that.
yeah. I mean I loved what I forgot the name of the person from Banger TV. Is it Blaine? Starts to be the long hair
Yeah, I
guy.
think it's Blaine. The
Blaine.
guy with the long hair wears hats. does like
Yes.
metal comedy, I think, something
Metal
like
comedy,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
He made me, when I was first getting into power metal, he made me really understand Twilight Force. He's like, this band, what makes a good power metal band versus a bad power metal band, like a band like Twilight Force, who I think is one of the best right now. They're in on the joke. They know how ridiculous it is, and they don't care. They're just like going for it. They know this is corny. They know this is cheesy, and they're like, we like it, and we're gonna make it.
Conversely,
Yeah.
I feel this of certain similar thing with like bands that are very serious.
Hmm.
Um, in that like the best of them are either just genuinely those guys, which is,
Yeah.
that own form of earnestness, or it's like a meticulous kayfabe, which gives it the same internal cohesion and alignment,
Hmm.
but informs it differently, where it's like an aspect of themselves that they're allowing to be, not, even if it's not how they feel about it entirely. Like they're, goofy, relaxed people or normal folks in real life, but then there's this extension of them that even if it's like comes across as completely sincere, is itself some kind of form and function of that joke, of that bit, of that corniness, earnestness, in on the jokeness.
Another way where I think that earnestness can come out, where like the seriousness and the earnestness can be there. Um, it's when bands who do take a super serious approach with their music, but know that it's a performance and it's not like their everything. And so, like a good example is this Fenrir's Darkthrone, a total dork, but knows how to, when he's on stage, becomes Fenris, and it's like captivating and very dark and sinister, but doesn't take himself too seriously outside of that, and I always thought that was interesting.
Hmm.
Like he is an
Yeah,
actor on
exactly
stage,
that.
he's a
Yeah.
character.
He's
Yeah.
on the bit.
Yeah. Mhm.
Hmm.
Am I right to say that the singer of Corrupted is also like a huge cosplayer? I
That's
believe one
I
of
did
the
not
incredible.
even hear about
Corrupted
this,
is
so
like
I
a
believe it because it's what I
yeah.
want to hear.
If I hear that a metal guy is being a weird dork about something, I don't question it. Like your buddy's probably on that leaderboard. I'm not going to take that away from him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Men of Men of War, like that's a great example of that hyper masculine power fantasy type deal that they still somehow do it over the years.
Okay,
Uh,
I would love to make a quick aside here. So Manowar, yes, absolutely. But when I was younger, my introduction to Manowar was their song Pleasure Slave, which is when I heard it, like the lyrics just straight like on the
yeah.
flat side of it, I was like, this is the most misogynistic song of all time. But once I like learned stuff from the kink community, I listened back to that song and I was like, this is actually the most informed and like educated thing about certain kink dynamics I've ever heard in a metal band. And it was shocking. And like, it's very interesting to look at Manowar in that complete cohesion to this like understanding that they're just presenting earnestly and not giving a shit if you get it.
I have a funny story about that song. Um, so I work in the service industry. I was behind the bar, and we get to have the aux port sometimes. And I was playing that Manamore record, and I forgot that song was on that album. And it came on, and I have that context. When I hear that song, that's what I hear. But then I'm starting to hear it from the perspective of customers who don't have that context. Like, oh fuck, this is not good. I got to change this right now.
I love it. And also, I can't remember, it's not the same record, but that song, Power of Thy Sword, that's like one of the hardest songs of all time, dude.
But there's bands now like that I think are like carrying that like high fantasy, but like with a sense of like earnest bravado to it. Like I think of like
Yeah.
Eternal Champion or
Right.
Visigoth,
Yeah.
Yep.
Atlantean Codex. Like those, I love that music is like. I don't know if it's cool. Like I don't think any metal is cool. I don't think anyone who like reads Pitchfork is like getting into metal. I don't think there's anything cool about metal. But it's like to like metalheads, it's getting cool again, and I think I like
Mhm.
that.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
yeah, I think the metalheads just kind of like I would say there's, of course, a lot of shitty things still going on in the scene, just like anywhere else. But I think a lot of people appreciate the earnesty, like, that approach to it, where
Yeah.
they know they can do fun, stupid things with it. They can go run wild with it as long as they understand there's an earnesty. It's all power fantasy, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. They
You
can
gotta
kind of
mean
just
it.
yeah, exactly. And I think I appreciate that a lot about like exactly the bands that you were talking about that do that. So um,
Mhm. Yeah, like Crypt Sermon, right? Like I feel like
great.
they're at the
Oh
very
yeah,
least in that area.
they're kind of in that space. Yeah, I think we were talking about that recently. I really love um that last Crypt Sermon album that came out last year.
Yeah.
The Rose, yeah. But yeah, the songwriting on it, some of the songs I was like, she some of the lyrics are like very corny too. She something about she's everything not type of deal going on. And I'm like, oh, okay, but you know what? In the context of the song, the way it's written, it actually works. It works really well. So um
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I yeah, that Crypt Sermon album that came out last year,
Hmm.
um, just like the best way to like modernize traditional doom metal. I
I agree.
it was very high on my end of the year list. I read the Decibel article last year where they interviewed the band, and I know a lot of their lyrics deal with like religion in kind of an inverted way, but
Right.
I I forgot exactly the context. The vocalist was talking about something where he was like he grew up somewhere where it was just very religious, like the like just his whole world was religion, and for him to discover heavy metal while being in this environment was like very hard because like you obviously you don't you don't do that. That's the devil's music. So like he described going to like a record store and like having to buy this Brujeria record and almost being like a heroin deal. Like just kind of like give it to me. I don't want anyone to see this. I have to, but I have to have this. And like I love kind of that context or where that's coming from in the music.
Yeah, I have to
Yeah.
say it doesn't really inform at least where I'm coming from with Tentacult, but I have a very similar experience. Grew up severely Catholic,
Yeah.
and my mother a few years ago just looked at me out of the blue and went, "I regret having let you listen to secular music." But my dad was, genuinely playing, the Alice Cooper songs about necrophilia for me in the crib, right? Dead babies. I knew all the words by the time I was 4 years old. And so it was a very interesting experience. And part of my eternal fealty to Ghost was that, I personally left the church, so to speak, at like 15, 16 years old. But it wasn't until their second album, Infestissimum, came out. Like I was with them from 2011 with Opus Eponymous, but I got really into them with Infestissimum, and I started realizing that Ghost scared the shit out of me. Um, because like these lyrics that were just open, like I listened to a fair amount of satanic stuff, but it was not legible. It was not like discernible to the ear. And the fact that Ghost did a good job of using these hymnal qualities to their music
Yeah.
that felt like the music I heard in mass, and then was just saying Hail Satan was I felt like an idiot at the time because like I'm scared of like, Scooby-Doo music, but having to sit in that was
Yeah.
what helped me pull out the last shards of Catholicism,
Yeah.
funny enough. Anyway, that's to the side.
No,
That
I
story made
appreciate
me.
that. I also I have a similar story. My dad was a Pentecostal preacher, so um I was into Christian metal as a kid. I didn't get to listen to the secular stuff till I finally abandoned the faith and was on my own. But if anyone here is familiar with the band Ancestor, I loved that band when I was like 13.
No, hold on. Give me an album. I'm gonna check this out.
Okay,
I'm
go
writing
listen to
notes.
The Forsaken. It is like the pinnacle of what's called unblack metal, Christian black
Oh
metal.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, we were just talking.
There's
We were
a
talking recently about Trouble, and how they were
Yeah.
marketed as white metal because of the
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah,
I don't
because the
think they were ever
Christian themes,
actually a Christian band. They just like
they
using the
weren't,
Bible.
right. I
But
liked it
Ancestor
because,
is.
yeah. Untested, I think, became sort of infamous because Euronymous was like writing them letters or like threatening to like beat their asses in the interviews and shit like
I
that.
love that.
So,
Um,
there's another. I think I don't know if you know. There's a I think Australian unblack metal band called Horde.
they were the first.
They were the first, yeah.
Yeah.
Helig Usvart, I think it was called.
Yeah.
I listened to it out of curiosity. I was like, wow, this actually rips. This is actually this is pretty thick and heavy and dark. But then you're like, oh wait, they're singing about how much they love God, I suppose.
Some of
Cool.
that stuff rips. I
Yeah.
mean,
It's very interesting talking about the ancestor death threats they got from Euronymous, but also
Yeah.
what's really funny about the Forsaken is Hellhammer plays drums on it
Oh
just
yeah.
because he talks about it, he's like, I don't agree with anything this band about, but I needed the money and they paid
Yeah.
me and I
I
did
need the
it.
check, man. I'm here for the check, you
I
know?
love. I also just love being a shit heel and telling people like, "Yeah, dude, you sing about Satan. You're a Christian band. You've accepted the paradigm. You're a Christian band now."
um yeah. It makes sense that there was Christian black metal in the 90s because there are Christians who lived in Norway and they heard the music and they're like, okay, we kind of like the music. Can we make it Jesus-y?
Right,
Yeah.
right. You know, it's
Yeah.
Beers
the
against
state
honey
reifying
approach.
the rebellion.
Right, exactly. Well, goddamn, we have been going on for an hour and a half. I don't want to keep you all for too long, but this has been very fun. But of course, before I shut it down, I want to give the floor to all of you for any last words. You know, plug your Bandcamp, plug your merch, plug your favorite restaurant. I don't care. Plug stuff. Go for it.
Well, I'll start like first off, Jimmy, Transylvanian Recordings has been
Yeah.
fantastic to us. You can get the cassettes from him still. I know he only has a few left. We have a few, but buy them from his Bandcamp, Transylvanian Recordings. We also have our own merch page on our separate Tentacult Bandcamp. Like we got these nice hats now,
Hell
so
yeah.
you can cover your fucked up head with that. We also still have CDs of Lacerating Pattern. No more tapes. RIP. Um, I also just wanted to make sure to give a shout out to Patrick Hills of Earth Tor Earth Tone Recording Company, I think is the name of it now. He runs his own studio here. He recorded Church. He recorded the first King Woman EP, Doubt. He's recorded so many of the best Sacramento heavy bands and punk bands and I mean everything else. He's in so many projects. He's in Feral Season. He's in the current iteration of Church. He's in his solo ambient project, Pastoral. He's just
Yeah, I was just
a
looking at
genius.
In
Book
Oromet
time
as
is
Oromet.
money.
well.
Oh, he's in the Oral. Actually, I brought out the
Oromet.
cassette so I'd remember to say it. Oromet.
Hell
I
yeah.
had to get really close to the mic for that one. Oromet is fucking incredible. So absolutely shout outs to Pat for the work he did on this record, both recording it, engineering it, everything. Um, and I wanted to give a shout out to you, first off, because I
Thank
didn't
you.
know about Anchoret until you did that
Oh.
interview with them. I fucking love that record. You want to
It's a
talk about
good-
people, yeah, like people doing something interesting in the prog metal space.
Mhm.
That album's a fucking journey. And so thank you for what you do, for asking us to come on.
Yeah.
When you reviewed our first album, we were at practice, we all watched it together and we're like, this is someone who actually heard it.
Mhm.
And
Yep.
we, as a small band, especially our first, big swing out, that meant the world to see that people could hear what we were trying to do.
I'm glad.
So,
Yeah,
thank you so
you.
much.
Yeah, appreciate that.
I guess I'll go next if that's okay. I wanted to plug in some of our Sacramento bands you may or may not familiar with. Like we already talked about the Oromet, Feral Season. There's an Ocliff was a project that Pat was a part of for a while. Um, Shout out to our boys in Abhorrency, Dave Phage, and Embodied Torment. Great, like first two like the war metal bands. And I know you did a review of Dave Phage's first
Yeah.
like little mini CD. Great guys. Rumor is those guys are working on another project, but you did not hear it from me.
What? No, I have no
Yeah,
idea what you just said.
cool.
Yeah.
Embodied Torment, like the death metal band from Sacramento that deserves all the praise. Piss Baptism are they're kind of like a weird grindy bands. Yeah, like there's a couple of the really cool goth rock bands that are kind of like popping out here. Ultra Fiend X is the one to watch for. And also to some of the Bay Area
And
bands
Dresden.
too. Yeah, Dresden.
But I mean, they've been around forever, but still.
Yeah. To the Bay Area, like we already talked about Jimmy from Transylvanian, also to Carbonized Records, like we already talked about Wild Rights, but also Mortuous, Vastum, Necrot, of course. Um, yeah, to also Succumb. Succumb is a great Bay Area band as
Oh
well. Very
yeah,
weird,
yes.
very death metal, very weird, very organic, very fluid, very interesting stuff. To Burning Palace, also great band.
Exon
Yeah,
House.
Hickson House, yes.
Yeah. A
Also one
lot
of
of a lot of label mates with us on
yeah,
Transylvanian. So I mean, just go through the Transylvanian Bandcamp,
yeah,
please.
Carrion Bloom and Exulansis as well. Also
Yep.
great bands, also great homies of ours. So shout out to once again to Wormwalk and to eBay for our artwork. They're great artists.
And in Reno, Vacker, where they are homies as well, and we're gonna get to play with them soon.
Next
And shout out to
weekend.
our boys in Severus. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Severus rules.
Yeah. I
Like
got
to
to get in a
shout
fight
out.
with the drummer about Brat versus Carly, Charlie versus Carly Ray and all that. That was great.
We will continue
Amazing,
that
yeah.
fight.
What was that?
We'll continue that fight. There's new
Yeah.
entrants into this into the pop wars. I think you guys were very nice and comprehensive with your shout outs. I'd like to shout out the Taco Bell app and the Luxbox deals. I literally depend on those to make my life work. If they took them away, I think I'd be more fucked than if I was evicted.
Hmm. I had Taco Bell yesterday. I did order on the app. It was great. Got a
Yeah.
Crunchwrap Supreme and 2 spicy potato soft tacos.
Oh
yeah.
yes.
My request if fucking somehow Taco Bell watches this,
Please.
please, your Diablo sauce is still not hot enough. Get a hot sauce. Get a real ass hot sauce. That is my only
Yeah.
request to you, Taco Bell.
They do
Anyway.
that thing with the Diablo sauce where it's like it tastes like shit, therefore you're supposed to think it's spicy.
Yeah.
Terrible. You get the hot.
Tyler, anything from you?
Um, yeah, they kind of covered a lot of it. Now I'm thinking about Taco Bell.
Yeah.
We are working on a few things. If these things go through, we'll have some records and CDs of album too. So stay tuned. Nothing's set in stone yet, but we're having some conversations. So look out for it.
Yeah. Follow us on the Bandcamp if you want to get updates. Our only socials are the Instagram at Tentacult Band, no underscore or anything. We're playing, I don't know when this is going up, but a week from now we're playing in Reno. Not too long for 2 weeks after that we're playing in Santa Rosa. We'd like to, try to do what we can later this year, perhaps, to do more Pacific Northwest stuff. So always feel to hit us up at our email, even tentacultband@gmail.com or through that Insta. Otherwise, just, I don't know, come hang out in Sacramento, the Red Museum, Cafe Colonial. Shout out to all of the people who are making incredible things happen there, like Chris Lemos and Wretched Earth Productions, our boys Robbie and Jensen, and so many other people who I wish we could name. Just,
Yeah.
nobody does it alone. And, we may work hard, but that's only because everybody else works harder. Oh, and Chrome Ghost. Man, you want to
Oh
talk
yeah.
about a local band that works hard and has supported everybody. absolute kings.
They're one of the hardest workers for sure.
Yeah. And if you
Well,
haven't checked out their stuff, House of Falling Ash, The Diving Bell, The Shallows, like you want to fucking cry. Oof.
well, thank you, Tentacult, for joining me. This was a great conversation. For everyone at home, out now, look up Untamed Revulsion off of Transylvanian Records. Um, as always, thank you to my patrons to keep the show running. As always, thank you to Monster Energy Drinks to keep me running. You watching right now, keep it metal. My name is Maddie, aka Beaver Mosh, and we're out of here. Bye.